Hello and welcome. I am Chris Gore. This is another Film Threat Watch Party. Tonight is a very special one. We have this incredible lineup of video game legends. I'm so excited to watch the documentary Insert Coin with all of you. As a reminder, go right now and get Insert Coin. It is on everything. Your Amazon Prime, your iTunes. If you are a gamer, if you've been a lifelong gamer as I have, this is a deep dive into one of the most iconic video game companies who has made some of the most iconic and legendary games. And we have basically a hall of justice of video game legends here to watch along with you and provide commentary. I'm so glad you're here tonight on Film Threat Watch Party. Hello, folks. Wow. What a year this week has been. Doesn't it feel like it's been something of a year? I'm hoping that we provide something of a distraction from the real world here. Quick reminder that, hey, you can watch along with us, and we want to hear your questions and comments because we have just this incredible group of people. I have bought their games. I have played their games relentlessly on many platforms. And let's just introduce and bring on the director. Joshua Tsui is here with us, who was on an episode of the Film Threat podcast recently where we had some technical difficulties, but we recovered. And Josh, it's so great to have you here, man.
Hey, it's so great to be back, and thanks for setting this up. I'm super stoked about this watch party. It's amazing.
Well, before we bring on all of our esteemed guests, people need to know, you're not just a documentary filmmaker. I mean, you began your career in the gaming industry. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, so I originally went to film school just thinking that I was going to make movies for the rest of my life, and I ended up in the games industry, developing games, starting with Midway Games, which is the subject of the documentary. And so I worked with this team that you're all about to meet on some of the craziest and greatest games of all time, not just the 90s itself. So I've been in game development for 20 plus years, absolutely love it, and just had this opportunity to make a film about it.
Well, I mean, to me, really great games are not much different than movies in the sense that it's all about good storytelling, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just you're telling a story, you're transporting people, with an experience, from their, let's say everyday lives. And so there are a lot of parallels between the two. And I love pop culture, I love video games, I love movies, and it was just kind of putting it all together. They're very different mediums in most ways, but in many ways, it's great escapism, and I feel very fortunate to be able to work in both worlds.
Well, I want to remind everyone watching that when we start the movie at 5:15, in just over 10 minutes, we're going to all press play at the same time. We're all going to watch Insert Coin together. You can go get the film. It's on Amazon Prime, iTunes. There's a link there, Linktree. If you've used Linktree before, it's just basically a list of links. Insert Coin doc, find that. And you will see all the different ways that you can watch, however you consume your media, and you can watch along with us. And please post your questions, because oh my God, there's an incredible group of people here to watch the film with all of us. So we should bring them on one by one, starting with Warren Davis.
Yes.
How are you? How are you, man?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How about yourself?
As well as could be expected.
I'm telling you, I literally have just recovered from COVID. Wow. Today is my 13th day of quarantine. I picked it up 2 weeks ago, right after Christmas, and luckily it was very mild. But I have been sequestering, so it's nice to connect with living people.
Well, I assume you were playing some games as well.
I did very little.
Well, I'm gonna move myself to the corner here. I'm gonna move Josh. We're gonna switch places. I want you to bring on everybody else here. And I know some of these folks. Let's bring on.
So George Petro, I mean, who has been working, in games forever, I think, and he was one of the, I'll let him talk about the stuff that he's done. But my quick intro for George is that he was when I first started Midway, he was basically one of the heads of the studio, particularly with the engineering team.
Great. And Carly.
Hi.
So Carly is an assistant professor at IIT out here in Chicago, and she wrote this incredible book called Coin Op Americans, and amongst other books. And she really got me some great information, for one thing, for the film. And she just brings this for lack of a better term, a scholarly attitude and information and seriousness to the film itself.
Great.
Yeah, super serious.
And where can we get your book, Carly?
You can actually get it anywhere. So you can order it from your favorite local bookstore. You can get it from any major online seller. It's published from University of Minnesota Press, and they distribute everywhere.
Cool. All right. And now we have Sal Divita. Dude.
Sal Divita was my first direct manager at Midway Games. And after 9 interviews at Midway over the course of a year, him and Mark Trammell finally took the jump to hire me on. So I owe Sal a lot, but Sal has worked on incredible games, such as NBA Jam, NFL Blitz, numerous wrestling games, and just like, and this goes for everybody here, but just on a personal basis, Sal is probably the hardest working person I've ever met.
Wow. Sal, anything to add? Any credits that we might have missed? Oh, wait, you're muted. You're muted, Sal. You have yourself. Okay.
I do that a lot. I don't know how I add anything to that. Thanks, Josh. And no, Josh was a great addition to our team at the time. I think you came on during WrestleMania, huh, Josh? That was
the craziness of it all.
Yeah.
Hi, Sal.
Hello.
Hello, Sal.
Hey, guys.
You're looking good, Sal. As
you
always.
guys as well. You guys look young.
Let's bring on John Tobias is here.
So John Tobias, I mean, the famous co-creator of Mortal Kombat, obviously, and he became my second boss at Midway when I worked with him on various Mortal Kombat games. And he's again, and then me and John ended up becoming business partners when we left Midway to form our own studio.
Good to see you, John.
Great to be here.
And let's bring on Dan Amrich. Dan, dude, good to see you, man.
Long time, right? Hi.
Holy crap. Yeah, like I'm trying to think the last time I may have seen you at some gaming event or E3, something like that.
Probably in the 90s.
Yeah, oh my God, yes, the 90s. Yes, I remember it well.
Let's not forget, like, I still have this, Dan. I had to bring this out to you.
Wait, what?
The infamous Dan Amrich action figure from the GamePro days.
Yes. Wow. Available in bargain bins everywhere for a pittance.
That's great.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Well, I want to remind our audience real quick before we start the watch party. Go get the movie right now. This is a watch party. We're all watching it together. This is a second screen experience. We are your second screen. Your primary screen should be the movie so you can watch along and ask questions and join in the conversation, kind of a live DVD commentary. What else do you have to say, Josh, before we get started in about the next 5 minutes? Oh, and I should mention, post your comments because I'll be putting up the best comments here for everybody.
I mean, it's this is an incredible group of former coworkers, but and I would also like to say friends who have really given an immense amount, an awesome amount of time, helping out with this film, and not just with the production of it and sitting down for interviews, but they've been so gracious to help with a lot of the press work, since the release of the film. So I'm, like eternally grateful for their participation in all this, because I know, like, just interview wise, we spent a lot of time interviewing for this film. And Warren was talking about this earlier. Like, I interviewed Warren for, let's say, over 2 hours, and I think he's in the film for a couple of minutes, but that's the case for so many people. But
I'm lucky. I feel grateful to be in it at all, right? I mean,
no, it's like,
how many people got cut?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the amount of people that you see featured in the film was probably a third of the people that actually got interviewed. But everybody spent huge amounts of time. I interviewed Tobias twice in multiple hour sessions. But like I said, everyone has really just been so nice in terms of putting time into this. I'm super grateful for it, and it blows my mind to be able to reunite with everybody virtually like this. We've done a couple of other press things together, and it's always been a lot of fun.
Well, this is pretty much the only way we can reunite, right? So let's do it. So Ty Yeager is asking a question. What movie? It's insert coin, man. Get the movie. This is the watch party. And look, we've even got some video game channels. Midway Forever says, "Hey everyone." Pinball Mayhem says, "Woohoo! Thanks guys for this." And we've got people posting comments. So, I guess there's an issue. Apple Store says not available until the.
Oh, you know what? So go to the link tree, because that'll have all the various links to everything else. Yeah, iTunes isn't until the 11th or 11th or 12th. My apologies for that. So your best bet is to go Amazon Prime or go to the link tree URL, and we have a bunch of virtual cinemas that are participating, so you can log in there. So Alamo Drafthouse On Demand is on there. We have a direct link to Cargo Films. That's the distributor for the film, so you can do it from there through Vimeo. And there's a bunch of different ones on there. So my apologies on that.
And I just updated our banner just now. So the banner is actually accurate. It's on Amazon Prime and more. So keep posting your comments. What does anyone else have to say before we get started? Any other comments from people before we roll the show, so to speak? I mean, this movie was, for you, Josh, this movie was obviously a labor of love,
yep.
Especially when it comes to, I'm fortunate to see a lot of pop culture documentaries, and yours blew my mind. I saw it, I can finally say I saw it last year at South by Southwest. Well, it wasn't, I saw it because of South by Southwest. Yeah. It was set to premiere there. Unfortunately, because of COVID, now everything is virtual. But that was that's the perfect place. That's the perfect audience is South by Southwest, and I know it was very well reviewed. Before you and I even met, it got a great review on Film Thread.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. Yeah, no, even though the festival didn't happen, just getting accepted by Southwest was a big deal, and it got the film a lot of recognition. And so, with that, a lot of really great reviews came in. So that's a silver lining in all this, is that it got the word out, and leading up to the release, it just made it a big deal, which I was really fortunate about.
Hey, John. Hey. Michael Lynn.
A lot of old coworkers, which is hilarious.
Well, I hope they ask some questions here, but I'm telling you right now, if you're watching this, and if you're not familiar with exactly who everyone is here, I can tell you that Warren Davis is the creator of Q*bert. And if you know that classic retro game, it's the celebrities that we have here tonight, I'm just blown away by. So if you don't know exactly who anyone is, use the Google and you will find out very quickly. We're getting ready to start. Does everybody have the movie queued up on some separate device, computer or iPad or television in the background or whatnot? Everybody good to go?
Yeah, ready.
Is everybody ready? Wait a sec. Is the audience ready? Is the audience ready? Let us know. Okay. What do you think? Who should do the? Josh, you should probably do the countdown.
I do the countdown. We'll count down from 5 and go from there. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's hit play.
Is the punk rock, they're like the Ramones or the Sex.
How'd you get that guy to be in the doc?
So here's the funny story. It was that I read Ready Player One, like many people like us have, and so I picked up Armada, which was Ernest Cline's second book, and the first quote in Armada is a quote from Eugene Jarvis, talking about how the only use of a computer is to play video games. And so when I read that, I just on a whim, I went on to Twitter and I tweeted to him, it's like, hey, I got this movie that I'm working on. Can I send you a DM? So he accepted it, sent him the trailer for the film, and he's like, I'm in. It's like, I'll give you 2 hours in Austin, Texas, if you can come down, and I'll give you the interview. So I'm like, hell yeah. So so I booked a flight right away and went down there, and we ended up I interviewed him for like 4 hours. He drove in his time machine DeLorean, and we did it in an arcade, and he was fantastic. He really brings so much to the film. He's kind of like the court jester, for lack of a better term. And some people may or may not know George Petro is one of the executive producers, but I didn't spare him any. I wasn't.
I got nothing.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what did you get out of that?
I tried, man. I tried hard. Josh is
I give George credit, man. He was hands off.
He's a stone wall, man. There's no getting past it. He kept the relationship, a working relationship.
Yeah. Exactly.
I tried to make it something more.
The opening sequence was by a motion graphics artist, actually a video director I know, by Noah Schulman, and he did just a bang up job with that.
Hey, that's Al Lasco, by the way. That's the back of Al Lasco's head. So
I can always
a big shout out to Al Lasco. He used to build all our games for us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, George? Are you in the office there? I'm trying to see where.
No, dude, that's my basement.
Your basement?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, like a little backstory. It's even before I worked at Midway, I was a complete '80s Williams geek. Like I was just a super arcade nerd, and I loved Defender and Robotron, especially. And Defender kind of blew my mind just with the complexity of it. So when I first started at Midway, I met Eugene Jarvis on the first day. And I was just kind of I was like shocked that he worked there. I didn't even know that at the time. So it's kind of, it was a nice coincidence.
That's not a good picture of Eugene, by the way. Josh, that I had the same experience with Eugene, but I met him in 1983, like after playing, Robotron is my favorite game. And, it took me a while to figure out people actually made games and they didn't just come from heaven. And then when I figured out, that people actually made them, I said, I have to go find this guy. And searched him out. It was not easy back then. There was no internet. There were no cell phones. You had to make relationships. You had to get, let into the secret club to meet Eugene. He looked a lot like that, actually.
Yeah.
That's our boss, Ken.
Right.
And all those folders behind him, those are notes that Ken took over decades of Williams and Midway. And when I interviewed him, I asked him about it, and he said that, yeah, I documented everything. It's all here. So I just on a whim said, all right, well, what happened on, November 1993 on this day? And he looked it up and it was there. Like he literally opened it up and it was like the CIA, but it's all analog on paper.
Here's the deal.
Actually, I remember Ken taking notes. I remember him constantly writing stuff down. Yeah.
It was frightening. Like I think they're all donated now to the Strong Museum. But it's like I can only imagine what was in there.
Oh, he's got copies. He's got copies.
I remember watching Ken write stuff down and never asking, but thinking, what are you writing? Like, is he writing something bad about me? Did I say something?
It's going in your file, John.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
John Tobias needs a haircut.
Yeah, probably. Need one now.
John had the best haircut of the whole department. Are you kidding me?
I did.
All the time.
High hair. Yep. Higher the hair, closer to God. That's right. I learned that.
Remember that? Remember that drawing?
Yeah. Up in the pinball department.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
What was it like, Josh, talking to Neil DeCastro about all this stuff?
Oh, I was shocked that we got Neil. I'll bring it up when he comes up again. But yeah, it was that was thanks to Mark Lafredo. Mark Lafredo enjoyed this interview so much that he told Neil to get on camera.
Wow.
There's George. George talking about becoming a game developer.
Yeah.
George, what was the process back then? Like, how did you even get, besides stalking or whatever else you must have done, but how did you even get like in touch with Eugene?
Oh, it's a crazy story. I never told you this story? Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
I worked in an arcade. I was a tech in an arcade, and we had a test pinball machine. And a couple guys, it was breaking all the time. So 2 guys from Williams flew down to my town and to look at it. And I'm like, okay, people are coming from the factory. And I did not let this one guy go until he told me that he would get me a job at Williams. So seriously, like the next day I drove to Chicago from Fort Wayne, and I stayed with this dude and his wife. I didn't know them at all. I just stayed with them. He goes, yeah, I'll get you a job. He took me in there. He had no idea. He had no clue how he was going to get me a job. And I basically just sat around for a day inside Williams, but freaking out the whole time. And he found me a job.
That's awesome.
That's a big commitment from just like a conversation with somebody,
Oh, totally, dude. Totally. Yeah. I think he was like, when I took him up on it, I think he was like a little, bummed out. Like, I'm coming. Give me a job.
It was interesting because in talking with Eugene about those early days, it sounds like stories like that happened a lot, because it wasn't like there was game schools or anything like that. So people just kind of popped in, it seems like.
Yeah.
Well, I had this really funny story with Eugene that summer, because I worked in the service department. I got involved with this arcade owner that wanted to put a video game on a projection screen. They wanted to put a Buck Rogers on a projection screen, and nobody could get it to work. And I'm like, I'll do it. Now I knew nothing, like literally nothing. And I remember one night I was working on it at our arcade, and Eugene shows up and he's over my shoulder. He's like, yeah, you'll never get that to effing work. And I'm like, all right, now you've done it now, buddy. It's going to work. And sure enough, like it took me like 2 months, the whole summer to get it to work. First phone call was to Eugene, and I made him come over and play Buck Rogers.
That's awesome.
Little did I know he was working on like a Buck Rogers type game. It was called Blaster. So he was super pissed off about Buck Rogers. Like he hated it. He was like, that game sucks. You need to put that game on there.
I love this story about the VHS camcorder. The ones I had one of those that you hold like this over your shoulder that would just, and then you could use it to play too. I never knew that was like how all that stuff was shot in the early days. And this VHS footage, I mean, this is all gold. It's insane how much cool stuff is here, Josh.
Thanks. No, yeah, it was a treasure trove, and a lot of it was from Ken Fides's collection. The one thing that we kind of glossed over, let me backtrack on, is Warren Davis's tech for digitizing. We should expand on that, because that was the backbone of how it all started.
I was going to bring that up, Josh. I was going to say that we weren't using VHS. We're using like high 8. We evolved to high 8 with a camera that I think was whatever highest resolution high 8 camera was at the time. But we're still getting a lot of bleed over on our characters. We had a lot of blurriness, and a lot of the blue screen would blend into our characters, and we wanted to get like a more crisp edge. So like, what about like shooting straight to the digital format? Because we had seen, we could do still captures. And then I think that's when we talked to Warren about this idea of putting a camera high, like a 3CCD camera in front, like hooking it up straight to a target card. And then Warren, you should talk about what you did there.
Well, I mean, it took a while for us to get there, because, the original digitizers, we were at the mercy of the PCs, the speed of the PCs, the memory of the PCs. There was literally no way at the beginning, when we were doing NARC, because that was the first game that used this tech. There was no way we could do live stuff. I think we
got PCs. They just got us the first PCs when we started NARC. Remember?
Yeah, that's right.
Those 286s or whatever they were. Those.
Oh yeah. And the first Targa boards were terrible compared to the Targa Plus that came later and had chroma key. But actually, I remember, Sal, you telling me a story we did. When you and John, you were there too at San Diego Comic-Con, we were talking about digitizing stuff, and you told me that when we finally got to chroma key, you still had to strip it out because of the bleed, which I wasn't even aware of that. I thought the chroma key solved everything, but
right. Well, it wasn't. I think it wasn't until we moved to a digital signal that we were able to use the chroma key properly, because the bleed was just so corrosive to the image. we always ended up having to hand strip and touch.
Yeah, and any kind, even high 8 or VHS, anytime you introduce analog tape into the mix, you're screwed.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. I was just gonna say, it's funny talking to developers today because we were such cavemen back then compared to what's available to us now.
Oh my God!
Narc was all shot on VHS. It was not. We didn't have high 8. Didn't come out until after Narc. I remember when those cameras. We went to like some form of Best Buy and bought the first ones that showed up. Like you have a high 8 camera. You know, we went and bought them.
I was gonna say that's right because I believe when I started, I remember Jack Hager, what became Smash TV. He had done some digitizing already, but he had used VHS. And I think I used VHS at first, and then somewhere between Smash TV and whatever happened after that, I think then we graduated to the high 8.
John, didn't you like try to digitize for Smash TV, and you're like, yeah, this sucks, and just
a little bit, exactly right.
Everything. I remember you going, I'm just going to hand draw this whole thing.
Yeah, right. Well, because the imagery was so small, it didn't make sense.
I remember that. I remember your tests, like your test captures on that ladder, like trying to shoot people.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, here's a funny story was, I was up on a ladder with a VHS, camcorder, and Jack was playing our grunt, the grunt that you see in Smash TV. And so he had like this foam baseball bat, and I'm up on the ladder kind of balancing myself, and Jack would get into it. I mean, when he would play those characters, I think he did some of the characters in Narc, but he was swinging that bat, and he kept whacking the ladder, and I swear to God, I thought, I'm falling off this fucking ladder. And I didn't, fortunately, but he was way into it. And actually, the grunt that you see in Smash TV started with Jack Hager's image, and I touched up over that.
I don't know, George, you were around during like my earliest days at Williams. But Eugene was not, because that was when he went to get his MBA, right?
Yeah, he left the industry.
Yeah, and then Lafredo, I don't know if you remember this, but Lafredo was working on a 256 color system, but it was going to be like a carriage system where you slide a different card in for each plane. Do you remember that?
Yep, I do. I do.
Then that all got scrapped. Eugene came back, and then we went to the 34010, which I love the 34010, but it was kind of ironic because it was a graphics chip, and then we didn't use it to do the graphics. We had our own,
because it was the backup for Lafredo's. If Lafredo failed, we were going to be blitzing on the 34010, which would have been a complete disaster.
Oh, absolutely!
Nobody would have played our games. Yeah, it was
it was horribly slow. Yeah,
but that was the backup plan. That was the fail. That's, you know what, Warren, I work with Eugene to this day, and our plans are blown up on whenever. It's all, this sucks. Start over. It's like,
we had a way of doing things that worked. I mean, it worked. It may not have been ideal, but it worked somehow.
Oh yeah,
by accident.
It did work. And one thing I was going to say about that VHS camcorder and Jack, I remember Jack going out in some of the worst neighborhoods in Chicago with that camcorder and shooting buildings. To the point when we put the game on test at that the Harlem and Irving Mall, there was a gang symbol on one of the garage doors that apparently the gang was in that neighborhood, and they told the arcade owner they were gonna come in there and take that game out and destroy it because Jack had flipped the symbol backwards, like he flipped the door so people wouldn't recognize it, but they took offense to it. So if you look at Narc, there's this one garage door where you can see it's like painted down the middle to split the gang symbol in half.
That's funny. Inadvertent gang diss.
I know, right? But that's what we were doing. We're just going out and shooting whatever. I don't think you can even do that today. I don't think you can just go and shoot, Water Tower and put it in the game, which is the headquarters of crack, is actually Water Tower.
Where's Termel today? Termel couldn't join us?
Yeah, not this time. I think he's so just tired of me bugging him to do things.
Don't feel bad, Josh. He doesn't answer anybody.
I know. But this is I love the footage of young Termel that started off this segment, and that was it was funny because we discovered that when I came to interview Mark in San Diego, and he gave Sal this VHS tape of him being profiled by like some daytime TV show, like back in the extremely early 80s. And here comes John Tobias. There you go.
Oh yeah,
that was the one of the milder hairdos.
Say again.
Your hair wasn't quite as high in those some of these photos.
Oh yeah, it depends.
You remember that picture where they shot that in that loading dock or whatever? Remember?
Right. Yeah. Yep.
Kind of Williams in a nutshell.
Oh my God, Jarvis.
You just get the still image.
He's just frozen.
He's on his cell phone.
Oh yeah, he's on. Yeah, so there he is.
Can you hear us, Gino?
He's sleeping.
He's sleeping.
So it's like he's sleeping, and yet he's still watching us.
Watching and judging.
You're all going to restart your projects tomorrow. It's gonna happen. Man, Smash TV was a great game. It is a great game. That
was a lot of fun to work on.
That was just outrageous. It's just so outrageous.
You know, we Josh, you and I did we were doing an interview a few weeks ago, and you know, one thing I think, just thinking about this period of time for me, you know, when I joined, when I look back on it, just the period of, you know, like NARC was this bridge from the days, you know, the early days, you know, of like Defender and Robotron and all those things. And then NARC seems to be this bridge into the 90s. Like that technology, you know, what Warren and George, what you guys had done was like this bridge into here, you know, like I knew nothing about game development. I was joining the studio at that time. And to me, it felt, now in hindsight, it feels like that was the bridge. That was like the connector between, you know, the heyday and then the resurgence in the 90s was NARC.
Yeah.
And you know what happened subsequently with Smash TV and all the other products that we eventually did.
Yeah, that was when I started, you know, production on the film. I didn't know that. It was kind of discovered after talking with so many people and stuff, and realizing, especially after talking with Warren and Eugene about the digitizing technique. This might be a good place. Like, I mean, Carly knows a lot about the coin-op era, and in talking with her, she gave me a lot of insight on how arcades were so different in the 80s, you know, as they transitioned to the 90s. It'd be interesting to get your take on that, Carly, about how, you know, NARC was kind of in the center of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird too, because there's waves of game development, right? So you have like the stuff from the 70s looks like totally different from like 1985, and then like you go from like 1985 to 1990 even, and it's like totally different again. And some of it's like who's playing changes a lot, and where the games are changes, because you go from having like the number of arcades goes down, but not necessarily the number of machines, and then like who's got access to arcades changes. So there's both more and less kids, which I always find really weird, right? So you get more family fun centers that are like very explicitly focused on kids, and then you have fewer of the kind of like mall arcades and things like that, like thousands of them close, and so they're being played by a different group of people than like who was playing games in like 1980, 85 or 82, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
I can tell you what drove us was Double Dragon.
Yeah.
When we saw Double Dragon, we're like, crap, this game is nuts. And we were making NARC. We worked on NARC for like, I feel like 10 years of my life. And and it was, you know, we would go to the arcade and people would keep coming out with games. Like more games would come out while we were working on NARC. And it's like, oh, this is cooler. And then Double Dragon showed up and it was like, oh my gosh, we have to beat Double Dragon. And that was a tall order with the, you know, the early days of what we were doing. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, it was not a given. NARC was not a given. It was a much different game when we started, and it came out very good, but it was a long road. Warren knows.
I don't even think I was there for the end of NARC, because I left after USSA got canceled. The tank game, you know, me and Newcomer.
Right.
We're working on the rival game, right?
USSA, what could be controversial about that?
But I wish some remnant of that still existed to this day. But the thing that amazed me about the digitizing was that other people didn't do it like we did. No. I mean, I was stunned. I just thought this was the next natural progression for the industry, and then we kind of embraced it. But No, but you didn't really see it on too many other games, if any.
Atari made Pit Fighter like at kind of like late, and their technology was not. They kind of stumbled over the same things we did initially, and their hardware was terrible. I mean, we had Lafredo hardware, which was awesome.
Yeah. And then the thing about Lafredo's hardware is he kept adding palettes. So suddenly we went from 256 colors for the whole game, to 256 colors for one character, which was like insane. Yeah. That was pretty cool.
That was so cool because that was the difference. And remember us fighting. I remember internally fighting, not fighting, but the discussion about should we go with a medium resolution monitor or should we go with low res, right? And NARC was the only one that was medium res, and everybody else after made the wise decision because the medium res monitor costs like 5 times as much as a normal monitor, but it did make the graphics super crisp. Yeah. I know, 19-inch monitor, so I think it was wiser to go low res, but we couldn't let ourselves go. We couldn't let it go in NARC.
There was some point where we doubled the pixel resolution. I think WWF was 512, right?
Yeah, if I remember right.
Revolution X wasn't 512 though, right? Was that still a 256? I don't remember.
Oh, the color resolution?
No, the pixel resolution.
Oh, the width? Yeah, I think we clocked up the horizontal after a while because the monitors could handle it.
I love that guy smoking cigarettes while he's playing. That was like a perfect example of Midway. It's like the factory worker is playing the game, smoking a cigarette. There's butts everywhere.
We had to walk through that factory every day to get to our offices. Remember that?
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, way in the back.
In hindsight.
Yeah, my first day, nobody told me how to get out of work. And so I leave the video studio, and I had to go through the assembly line of the pinball factory, and I got lost. I seriously got lost, and I didn't want to panic. It was my first day of work, but I thought I was gonna cry and have to eat my arm or something.
I may have done that too the first few times.
Did you guys ever use the check cashing box at the corner of the factory?
I remember that.
Oh my God, that's like on payday. This giant truck with cash would roll up, and these guys would get into this metal box, and you'd go give them your paycheck, and they'd give you some percentage of your paycheck back in cash. But there was this huge line. And if you really needed, a lot of factory workers needed the cash on the way out the door. Yeah. So it was an interesting, for me, coming from a small town, I was like, what is this,
Mm-hmm. Did you guys ever walk through the plant when it was completely empty, when they weren't building games?
Of course.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. That was a different experience. Just such a huge, massive ghost town of a plant. Yeah.
Right.
Well, there were creatures in that plant, too, that wandered around. They were quite large, I remember.
We're getting a lot of people asking questions they want you to answer. Does anyone have that hot new arcade game, Marquee?
I got one. I've got one.
Yeah, I had never saved one.
And what about the Double Dragon got a film adaptation, a NARC movie? Is that coming, or was that?
Wasn't there in the 2000s, Sal, you might know, wasn't there there was a NARC sequel, I remember, but wasn't there rumors of that being a movie or something?
That's right. There was, because Scott Lane was working on it, somebody I work with, and he was working on a new version of NARC, but it never came to fruition.
Gotcha. This part I thought was really interesting about Bally's. I really didn't know a whole lot about Bally, and looking back on it, man, they made a shitload of games. They've made so many games. It was kind of ridiculous. And I never. It wasn't until I talked to Brian Cullen, finding all this out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we bought them for nothing.
Yeah. Well, I just remember Eugene, Eugene talking about Bally Midway from a Williams point of view. Man, you can tell he was still angry. He was just there's a lot of fire in his voice,
It's funny. I joined after all that had happened, so I was completely ignorant of what had transpired. But I did have sort of a negative outlook on Bally, only because I saw it through Eugene's eyes. I only heard what Eugene said about it. So my picture was painted completely by Eugene, and so I knew nothing about the details about it. I just knew that, those guys suck. That was coming from Eugene. So.
That's funny.
Was there a Star Wars game you were going to develop? Asks Zero Cool 1984A.
There was a minute where after the first Mortal Kombat game, Ed Boon and myself had talked about doing a follow-up Mortal Kombat, Star Wars product. And it was just an idea we had. It never got any further than an idea. So not really. I don't know if anybody knows of any other Star Wars product that may have.
I remember asking, I interviewed you around the time of Mortal Kombat 3, and you went on the record with me to say, yeah, you know, we had this idea, because I asked you about if you were getting burned out on being sort of like Mortal Kombat was such a big hit. You obviously had a responsibility to keep it going for the company. And you know, you both sounded a little tired by the third game, but you said, yeah, we had this great idea for a Star Wars game, and maybe we'll do that. And I remember printing that. Everybody's like, the guys doing Mortal Kombat are going to do a Star Wars game. And I'm like, no, they had a Star Wars idea. That was not, you know, confirmed. You know, gamers believe what they want to believe.
Yeah, it was just an idea. You know who shut us down real quickly was Ken Fidesna. Shut that down like immediately.
Really?
Like, you know, he was, because we weren't sure really ultimately how the first Mortal Kombat was going to perform, because I think it had just come out. And I remember Ed and I having that conversation with Ken, and he wanted a sequel. And I don't know that we had done many sequels, you know, video game sequels yet. So, so it wasn't, you know, a sequel to the first MK certainly was not top of mind by us by any means.
So DJ Will asks, who collectively owns the licenses to Midway properties in 2021?
Warner Brothers.
Well, there you are.
I think it's mostly, but like NBA Jam is with EA now.
EA.
I think there might be a couple of random things.
And Blitz as well.
Yeah.
What about, are there games that never made it past the development stage? Like, are there that you can talk about? Like, I think that's a lot of what people want to know. Like, I wrote a book once called The 50 Greatest Movies Never Made. I feel like someone should just do a video game version of that. There's a lot of video games that get announced that don't come out. So
there's somebody actually did write that book. It just came out recently. The author's name is Frank Gasking, and it's something. Yeah, it's literally a book about video games that were never made. I know that I worked on a Highlander game at Williams.
Really?
We were in negotiations to get the license to Highlander, and it didn't work out, and I ended up moving to California. So, and the thing is, it was sort of like on the table for months. It felt like months, and I was waiting to get approval, and I had done all this sort of test code, and I had Jake Simpson was doing all the sword stuff with playing, against himself, battling himself, and but I was waiting to get the approval. This was at the time of the TV show, so we would have had the actors from the TV show. And it just never seemed to happen. And then weird things transpired to get me to move to California. And literally after I decided to move to California, Neil Nicastro came in to my office one day and said, "We got a signed agreement." And I had literally quit the day before and said, "I'm moving to California." So it did not work out, but I always thought that would have been a cool game. Highlander.
This section of the movie is really interesting about the Terminator 2 video game. Can you all chime in on this? I thought that this, I really didn't know about any of this. And I just remember loving that game because it was so easy to just ease into any part of it. It was really fun and plus also the way that the images look so real, right? I mean, that game was groundbreaking at the time, and I don't know. There was always a line for that game or people surrounding it.
Yeah, that was really the game that we were super fortunate to get that license, and it came sort of out of the blue, and it ended up. Neil called me because I happened to be open to do everybody was working on something, and I had just finished a game, and I thought, wow, this is gonna be amazing. And we went and pitched this thing directly to James Cameron, what we wanted to do. And I showed him, the VHS tapes of Narc, how we did everything, of Doug Watson on the treadmill and everything. And I said, we really need access, in order to make this great. And he's like, I love it. He said, this is awesome. He goes, give these guys everything they need. And Jack really spent a lot of time out in California on the set. We got access to all the actors or their doubles, to sets, any props. And it was, it looks that way because we got so much access, and they allowed us to use their documentary film crew to film anything we wanted. so we could get them to go and shoot stuff for us if we couldn't be there. But I think more importantly, what was really cool about the project is, number one, I lured Warren back to Williams with that game because he was gone, and I go, I got to get Warren back to help us with this because he'll love this, right? This is like, we dreamed about this, right? I mean, this was the dream when we were starting all this. And I go, if Warren doesn't work on this, it will be a crime. And plus, Warren's super awesome. So, he came back in. I was like, I dangled it out there, right? Remember?
I remember. So I remember, like, you guys couldn't tell me exactly what the project was, but it was like, we're working on this like big thing, and it's going to be a big, but you didn't have to say any of that. You could have just said, will you come back? And I would have said yes, honestly.
I didn't know I was young, Warren. I was young. I'm more experienced now.
The timing was just absolutely perfect because I had left and I had done this other game for Premiere, and I had kind of like a terrible experience with them, and they hated me and they didn't want to work with me anymore. And then all of a sudden, boom, got a phone call from Williams. I was thrilled.
Yeah, and there was another guy at the time. There's another programmer that's not in this documentary. His name's Todd Allen, and Todd is amazing. And Todd was with us pretty much from the beginning. And he came and helped us on Terminator to do some of the tech work that was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, that game is really a great team effort that we put a really nice team together. And I can't say enough about Todd and the stuff he gave us, like a lot of the tools that we use. Remember ToddView, everybody. Life without ToddView, which was our debugger, our visual debugger. If we didn't have that, these games would have never got done. I'm telling you, the old way of debugging compared to what that tool was so amazing in allowing us to sort of achieve higher levels of programming and stuff. So a lot came out of Terminator. And also one of the things that I thought was really fun is, this was exciting for our little department. And anytime I got snippets of stuff or anything, I would get everybody to come in the conference room and go, here, everybody watch this videotape or watch this. This is something from behind the scenes of Terminator. Because, it was so exciting. I mean, we were just a group of guys in this, back of a factory, and all of a sudden we're getting access to Hollywood. And it was really a fun project. And I'm glad that it ended up being very successful because it was fun.
I remember at some point seeing the ending, the original ending that didn't make it into the theatrical cut. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Now, did we like have a videotape of that or something? I can't remember.
Yeah, we had a rough cut of the movie that had the ending in it. I still have it, by the way.
Eugene Jarvis showed up just as we're watching him quit in the movie.
Yeah, see.
So, Mr. Jarvis.
One more thing.
Hello, Eugene.
Hey, Eugene.
Hey, Warren, remember you did the video playback out of EEPROM. Remember? You had to press the video. That was the forerunner of compressed video, was in Terminator to run movie footage.
Becomes the best
I was like,
the best quote from Jarvis here.
What?
When did you guys
what's up?
Why did you have that microphone, John? What was that all about?
That was, I don't know, Tianis and those guys set me up with that. That was, I think we were doing like a tour. That was a promotional video for one of the MK games we did later. And I was walking around the studio interviewing folks.
I just went behind the scenes. So this segment about coming from the 80s to the 90s, that was from talking with Carly and also with Dan even, just because they had so much good information about, just the arcade industry during that time. And again, I didn't really think about it until I talked with them about this transition in the audience, from one era to another.
Yeah, well, that period's so interesting because it's like when you get all the a lot of the big regulation pushes, and like they're totally comical in retrospect, right? Because like they're sitting in the Senate chamber, like watching video clips of Night Trap, which is like the weirdest thing I can imagine anyone doing.
Which is what Trammell worked on before he came to me.
Yeah, that's the irony of it.
he was working. Well, he didn't do Night Trap, but he was working for that company, and they closed their doors, so he ended up with us.
Yeah, well, because they shot all that footage. Like it was like years before it became a game. Like it was shot to be something else. Like the whole thing's weird. It's real weird.
Well, no, it was a VHS game.
Yeah.
It was U-Drive. Was that the name of that?
I can't.
No.
No.
It was a Hasbro console.
Yeah. It was
I think Trammell was working on Police Academy. I think he was doing like a Police Academy,
of course,
version of that thing. Oh, they had this one called Sewer Shark.
Sewer Shark, yeah.
That the dude from Star Wars, who was the visual effects guy from Star Wars, shot Sewer Shark or something, and they were using all these really high end, I
kind of feel like our timing was so poor, right? Like I like the idea. I love the idea of like having interactive B movies, right? Like that sounds great.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Well, we got some questions. We got some questions in the chat that are pretty good here. Josh, what Midway game did you want to include for the documentary but couldn't for time, story, structure?
So the biggest one was was WrestleMania. WrestleMania and Blitz were two segments that I actually had fully edited more or less, and wanted to get into the film. But they got cut for various reasons. But like in the case of WrestleMania, it was a decision between that and Revolution X, and they both told the same stories, and they were kind of back to back in the film. And so I had to it's kind of like Sophie's Choice. I had to pick one or the other, and ultimately it was like there was just such great footage with Aerosmith that I thought that all right, this may be the way to go. But both stories was about big high profile games that ended up not doing as well as expected, even though there were like these big name stars in it. But it also showed how far Midway had come in terms of their notoriety because of games like NBA Jam and Mortal Kombat.
You chose Steven Tyler over Doink the Clown, right?
Trust me, that like WrestleMania is the first game I ever worked on, so like on a personal level, I wanted to keep that in. But it's gonna be in the Blu-ray as a bonus content, so that's like the consolation prize.
Oh, that's great. So I was going to ask if it was going to be on the DVD, but hey, you could make a sequel. Insert more coins. Bobby Schwartz asked, is that level of backstage access to assets that James Cameron gave you guys, is that typical for a licensed game to get that much access? I mean, there were, is that normal?
Well, I think at the time, no, because there was no need for that kind of access. I can think of maybe like Firefox, the Laserdisc game, was very tied into the production, but that was produced by the same company that made the movie. I think for an independent party to come in to another independent party and get that kind of access was very unusual. Not so I've seen it later now. I mean, it became a very common thing that, oh, this is how you do it. Back then, I don't think that was the case. And you have to understand, James Cameron, that guy thinks way far forward. He's not scared of ideas, and he jumps into things. You know what I mean? He sees that that's the right thing to do, and it was really cool. So yeah, I think it was fairly unique at that time.
Yeah. Did Midway make a game similar to Death Race released by Exidy?
I wish we did. I mean, that was the coolest game ever, man. It's like, we should probably be working on that right now, I think.
Get on it, man.
And were there any Midway titles that almost became movies, TV shows, aside from Mortal Kombat?
Actually, back in the day, they were talking about Robotron.
Really?
Being a movie.
They should still do that. Someone should still do that.
Yeah, I know it's out there, man. Just give me a call.
Wait, so does Warner Brothers own the rights to Robotron, or like the Williams era games?
Yeah, they have all those games. Yeah.
And then, were there any issues over character designs between various companies? Did they? I mean, game companies would definitely admire other stuff, and we're going to make something similar, but did anything like that ever happen?
Well, one thing, it was in the lawsuit area. We got sued. Actually, when we did Robotron, we got sued by Disney because it had the word Tron in it.
They were suing everybody with the word Tron, I remember.
Yeah, that was a cast of thousands, and finally, I think they gave up and they realized they couldn't own everything that had Tron in it. But there was actually a big TV show based on the game Narc. It was, a cartoon.
Oh, right.
That was what was it, Power Hour or something? What the hell was that? That was
yeah, it was an Acclaim produced thing.
Acclaim produced cartoon, and it was the weirdest thing about it was, you know, Narc was this super hyper realistic, you know, blow people into you know, a million pieces of hamburger, and the cartoon, like the villains were. It was like goofy, incompetent villains and stuff. It was like Keystone Cops or something. It had nothing to do with the game at all, and it was pretty bizarre.
Hey, I got a real quick note. Did you guys see Ed and his cabinet right there? That cabinet that you guys did Mortal Kombat on? The glass, the glass that was surrounding it. That was the original artwork from Narc. That was the original Narc development cabinet that Ed.
Really?
Yeah, it was like this weird spray paint hand tricks and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, John.
Yeah,
I thought that was super interesting.
I was just gonna say that Narc cartoon. I think it was like Narc. Wasn't it Narc / Arch Rivals Power Hour or something? Wasn't Arch Rivals somehow involved? Remember the Arch Rivals basketball game?
Yeah, it was. No, that was insane, and I don't know. But it's funny that spray paint thing. It's weird how, you know, you're doing a cabinet for a game, like, oh, we're urban, we're cool, we're gonna spray paint, you know, and we got some really cool spray paint, but then like we showed it to a couple of people, they go, what does that say? You know, like, what is that? You know, and you know, and then we go through all these iterations and create what ended up being Narc, which was I thought was pretty brilliant Jack Hager stuff, and with kind of the big rubber stamp and blood and stuff, and then. But then it's weird. Like sometimes on a project, you'll be walking around, and you'll see like the original cabinet. You go, why the fuck didn't we just do that? You know, it's like you've got such a long design process that at the end of it, you realize like maybe we should have just done what we did initially. It's like,
Here's a question for Warren. What was it like seeing Q*bert and Wreck-It Ralph?
Oh, it was pretty well. It was kind of a mixed bag. Okay, so like on the one hand, it was very nice seeing Q*bert anywhere because, you know, mostly people have forgotten Q*bert. A lot of people have not. Some have not, but many have. But then, you know, then just to depict him as this sort of like destitute, forgotten character was a little pathetic. But honestly, I did not take that personally. I actually agreed. It kind of was reflective of what's happened to the characters. So. No, I was just happy. I was just happy to see that the characters remembered it all. Yeah, it's kind of surprising.
Yeah. On that note, you know, I talked about earlier when on my first day at Midway meeting Eugene, being just stunned that Eugene was there. First time I met Warren, I was stunned that like the creative Q*bert was there. As an arcade rat of the 80s, it was just like, what the hell is going on? It's like world colliding. I didn't think it was real. And then the first time I worked with Eugene, with Warren. He was showing me how to use one of his art tools, and it kept crashing. But I told him after I used this, like, hey, it keeps crashing on me. Well, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing, you know, what I'm supposed to be doing. And his comment back was, well, then don't do that. It's like what?
Operator error, man.
Exactly. It's
always operator error.
And then Eric Francisco asks, in the documentary, Learn Midway fostered a lot of internal competition. In hindsight, do you think that hurt the company in the long term?
I don't. You know, I think we lived and we died by it. You know, I think it did. I mean, there was a lot of creative tension, and you know, it allowed people like Ed and John, who were just totally new guys, to go and start their own project and, you know, kill the world with Mortal Kombat. So it allowed a lot of freedom to do different stuff and experiment. But it definitely got to. You know, that it became almost like clans clashing for resources, and you know, it started getting political toward the end. So it's weird. It's probably our best, one of the best things that we did, and one of the worst things that we did.
I just think it was funny because we were all so doggone young, except for Warren, maybe.
I mean,
and newcomer.
I was a little older than everybody else, but I don't think I was that much older.
No, you weren't, but you seemed a million years older than me, though.
You're more mature.
I had kids. I did have kids.
You had kids, dude. You were married.
My kids. My youngest or my oldest son was born in '83, and that was before I got to Williams. Yeah.
I mean, dude, you were like 28 or something, man.
Yeah, I know.
So on this part, so a little thing, I had first met Dan when I had when I was working on the Tony Hawk series with Robo, and Dan was, I think you were with OXM back then.
Yeah, I was.
So you came in and we did an interview about the project and everything. And I didn't know anything about Dan's relationship with Midway at the time. And so it wasn't until years later that I found out, like, wait a second, he's in NBA. Is it Hang Time that you're in?
Yeah, I'm in Hang. Everybody thinks I'm in Jam, but that is like my greatest honor and my greatest ethical lapse as a journalist when Mark and Sal said, hey, you want to be a secret character in one of the games? I said, sure. I thought they were kidding. And they're like, well, we're going to need photos by Monday. Okay, yeah, sure. Like, didn't even think about the ethical ramifications of, oh, yeah, this is a game that I cover regularly in Slam Magazine and stuff like that. So, I didn't know. We got to talking as just part of covering the Tony Hawk stuff, and then found out that we both, I mean, you had a stronger connection to Midway, but as a super fan and somebody who covered the company a lot, I was always on the phone to Roger Sharp. I think I freaked Sal out by sending him bunny ears because I wore bunny ears in my portrait for Hang Time, so I'm the secret character with bunny ears. And I, for some reason, thought it would be a really cool idea to send like Mark and Sal bunny ears, like a creepy internet stalker. So I officially apologize, Sal. I'm sorry.
Okay. A lot of therapy after that. I'm over it. It's all fine.
I think it's so funny. It's so funny watching you guys playing basketball in that segment.
Yeah,
I don't think was that Jamie in that segment? Was he in there? Was that who was
Jamie, me, and Gentile or
not between basketball? Well, I saw Carlton in there, but
oh yeah, he was actually good.
I was gonna say, would Jamie know what to do with the basketball? They didn't play basketball.
I think he thought it was a rugby ball.
So Sal, real quick, so that where we just saw that fella dribbling, that was a different facility. That wasn't one of our. That wasn't
correct.
At Midway, right? So because what I remember was Jack had just had this big light rig installed in the the back room, and we spent a lot of money on this light rig and this setup. And when you guys started Jam, Mark had this basketball hoop, put back there, and so on our lunch break, we would go back there and play horse. And I just remember the basketball bouncing around and coming within inches of hitting all this expensive equipment. We were crazy. I can't believe we were back there throwing a basketball around. It was nuts.
That's funny. I remember. We had
no supervision.
No,
exactly. Yeah.
Zero supervision. That's what I was trying to get at, Warren. Is we were basically, it was high school kids running around, like, right, and getting paid for it, which was like I got $200 every 2 weeks. I don't know what you guys got. I was pretty happy. I was pretty happy about it. That was actually mine and Ed's joke all the time. When we get our paychecks, we'd go $200.
Well, it's funny. I don't know if I tell this story in the documentary or not, but I remember when I started at Midway, I was making like $19,000 a year.
Oh yeah.
And so I had friends who were like working at UPS, and they were making so much more money than I was, doing overtime and all this stuff. And I wasn't spending any time with them because I was constantly working. It took a lot. You had to devote a lot of your time to this. But I loved the work, so it didn't really bother me all that much. But I remember sitting down with one of my friends and doing the calculations on what I was making an hour. And it was so far below minimum wage. It was insane. I didn't care, though. It's like I enjoyed the work, so it was cool. But I was making nothing.
Well, it's cool because it was a 9-to-5 job, too. So you could do something with your extra time.
You mean while I was at Midway?
Yeah.
9 a.m. to 5 a.m.
Yeah, right. 9 a.m. to 5
5 in the morning.
We did remember how many heads you guys had to do? Like how many different heads you guys had to do for a jam?
Oh man. Well, was it 2 or 3 times every team? God, that's it. Nobody knows. It's too many heads. It can't be counted. It was God, probably around 100 plus.
Yeah.
With all the different characters.
It's something that I would have loved to gotten more in detail is just the fact that it wasn't like you guys could go on the internet on Google Images and find the heads. You got to literally take it from like magazine photos and VHS tapes and such.
Yeah. We had every possible avenue. And then we would, like you said, magazines, we would record games, hope to get a certain angle of somebody's face as they're like, as the camera, got a close up and it's like, oh, that almost works. Okay, like freeze frame that. And we use like WTARG to capture it. And then we would try to clean it up, scale it down, sharpen it. Tony would, show lit the way with hand. He could hand paint so well with a mouse, mind you. There was no style. Yeah, so with the mouse, he would hand paint like the just amazing enhancements on the faces. And then I started trying to do that, and then we would, of course, cheat. We would sometimes duplicate like backs of heads. You couldn't tell who was who from the back of the head. It's like, okay, we need a curly-haired person, or we need like a blonde head. Let's grab this guy's. And so we tried to, but yeah, we would any possible way of getting images. Even lookalikes. So we would get people from the studio that looked like basketball players and shoot them from like the back angles, top angles, or whatever, just to take shortcuts.
Someone asked, did jam as slang for playing basketball or dunking come from this game first? NBA Jam?
Oh, I see. No, because there was something called NBA Jam Session already, and I think that's where we got it from.
I'm just amazed that obviously NBA players enjoyed the game. They enjoyed seeing themselves in the game. After a while with other incarnations of the game, did you finally get access via the NBA?
Yeah, on future games, they realized how important that access was, and then they would take. We sent them that little sheet that Josh showed in his video there in his documentary, and they would try to reproduce those shots for us with every player, because they all came in for photographs for every season, every spring train or whatever it was, every preseason. They would come in for photographs for the TV broadcast stuff, and they would take our photos too.
And did you ever get feedback from NBA players like, "Oh, how come you made me do this?" Or, "Oh," did you ever get that kind of, accolades, or maybe,
Yeah, sometimes we would hear those stories. We didn't really, the communication wasn't as good back then. So we would hear, though, that people always complained about their stats. Everybody wants to be the best at everything. They would always complain about their stats. Like everyone wants to be a 10 on every stat.
Stats.
So.
My stats. It's good we didn't have the internet back then.
I know. So distracting.
We had enough distractions already.
We would have been run out of the country.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, who discovered Tim Kitzerow? Was that John Hay?
Maybe. John's watching. John, did you discover Tim Kitzerow? Answer us.
So a little trivia thing. I worked on a project in Washington, D.C. About a couple of years ago, and there's like this big interactive video floor it was like a virtual, helicopter ride and stuff. But we actually hired Tim to do the voice of it. And when I told the client, it's like, hey, this guy's the voice of NBA Jam. He's like, hire him. It's like, look at what he sounds like.
It's funny.
It's like but Tim was amazing. So we recorded him in one of the local barcades in Chicago, and there's like customers all around. So he's just yelling still. Yeah, he just doesn't care. So he's like shouting boom shakalaka, and like the patrons, customers look at him like, what the hell is this guy doing?
He's amazing that way, isn't he? Like he does not care.
Yeah.
It's like you press play on him and it just goes.
Yeah.
I heard an interview with Tim. I didn't know that he had done a lot of the pinball, voices for the pinball machines. Because he had done Gilligan's Island. And a few of the other ones.
Gilligan, dude. I remember walking out of my office one day and seeing this old guy with a Gilligan hat on. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that.
That guy's got a Gilligan hat on. Oh, it's Gilligan.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
That was like the greatest day of my life.
Uh-huh. I think Tim is still doing some voices for the Stern pinball games, from what I heard.
He is.
Yeah. Daniel, you know about that.
Deadpool, and he worked on the new Elvira table. He's still very active with that.
What is it with pinball and Elvira? It seems like no, seriously, because that's come back again. I have all these tapes, old Williams pinball tapes, where there was like Elvira showing up at like an AMOA, and there's just throngs of people everywhere.
Dude, I was there. That was mayhem. People were climbing on top of those, at trade shows where they build offices and stuff.
Yeah.
When she came to our booth, people were climbing on top of the office to get a view, and people were falling through the ceiling. Like it was, because those aren't real wall. That's not real. And it was crazy. Like, I don't know why at that time she was super popular, and people went nuts when she walked in the show.
But yeah, they just did a new pinball with her, so it's crazy.
I know.
Sal, you were so animated in this part talking about doing that. I love that. It was like you the audio meters.
It was a great memory. That whole thing about, the first time somebody broke a backboard in NBA Jam, how the whole place just erupted. They had never seen anything like that before. And people just like ran around the inside of the arcade, just took his hands off the stick and ran around the arcade. The whole crowd just like celebrated and followed him, around the room. And it was amazing. That energy was great.
Yeah. That was the amazing thing about arcades back then was like, I just remember going out on tests, and it was like, like in the middle of the night at some crazy ratty arcade, but like people would get so excited about stuff. There was just screaming and high-fiving and everything. It's like complete strangers.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Those reactions I think were so organic. It was like, it's not, it's different today, but back then it's like you were live on location, with other players. And I think that's something that, you just don't experience nowadays. And, but it was super special back then. I remember watching players react to when we would test, and there was nothing better than that. Like you would know that you did something right when they would, behave the way that you just described, Sal. The cheering and stuff, that was huge.
Isn't it crazy to think though, like that scene where the designers of the game are sitting there watching the people play it didn't happen. Only happened in a very small handful of places, like in Chicago and maybe out in California, right, where the Atari guys were. It's just, that is the most incredible part about it. Just like literally watching, everybody play games.
One of the best stories in regards to the testing is, Sal, that you talk about when we tested WrestleMania, and it was like sitting next to MK2 at the time.
MK2 at the time, yeah. Yeah, so that one was, because you always, right away the response to your game and how successful your game is going to be. And MK2 was out for a while, and people were playing it, and we put a WrestleMania on test, kind of like near it, like right behind it, so that its controllers were kind of like right in front of where people would turn their backs to play Mortal Kombat. And I remember that people would walk up, lining up for Mortal Kombat 2, of course, because it's amazing. And then we turned on WrestleMania, and people walked up to it. They looked at it, but of course the crowd is around Mortal Kombat 2. And then eventually, one or two people might like look at the track mode, and then look at Mortal Kombat, look at the track mode of WrestleMania, and then of course Mortal Kombat's way more exciting. And then like in somehow, some way, we look back at WrestleMania, and there's just like coats hung up on the controllers.
Oh man!
Hold my coat while I wait for Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah. Not good. Not a good sign. Not a good sign when your game becomes a coat rack. No. We've all been there, I think.
This last part on the NBA Jam, when Dan, you're talking about the just how there's a game that so many people play that weren't necessarily gamers, and you talked about Penn Station at the time, and that was really enlightening.
Station Break was my arcade of choice. I was like a young journalist working in New York City, and I was traveling in from New Jersey to New York, and I backed my commute up so that I would have time to spend a good half hour playing NBA Jam and Mortal Kombat 2 when that came out in Penn Station Arcade in the morning. And even in the morning, there were other people like me that were on their way to jobs, commuting jobs in the city. And there was always something in Station Break. Somebody recreated that specific arcade in VR.
No way.
And I cried because that was like, that was my mecca, right? Like I didn't realize how much emotion I had tied into that. But it was the first place I played Dragon's Lair. It was the first place that I played Smash TV.
Wow.
And I just like to be back even in a simulacrum of that space was like the most emotionally moving thing for me. My wife's like, "What are you upset about?" I'm like, "I remember when there was a Mortal Kombat right there." Like that's completely insane to her. But yeah, it was a very special place, and if you wanted competition, oh my God, you would get 13-year-old kids playing NBA Jam 2-on-2, teaming up with a 54-year-old banker, and just saying, let's take those guys. It was a really awesome dynamic that as you guys have said, you just don't see anymore.
Yeah, amazing. This is another surprise for me, was that obviously I knew about the controversy behind Mortal Kombat, but it never dawned on me that it didn't really come to a head until it came home. And Ernest Cline, he's the one that brought up like, hey, there were no moms in the arcade, so they didn't really know what the kids were doing, outside the house. But then it comes home, it's like inviting a vampire into your house, and suddenly the parents know what's going on.
Yeah, well, the other thing was I think Acclaim had put a lot of money into the advertising campaign, and that really put it front and center. So that was crazy. We talk. I've said before that I and I can't speak for Ed, but I think it was similar for him, that we were always so busy working that a lot of this stuff flew past us. Like we were in some respects we were shielded from a lot of the controversy. Like we never commented on it. And we were so busy working that it was like, oh yeah, people are, upset about the game, but we're busy right now. So let that take care of itself, kind of.
Yeah, John, I remember like even a bomb threat came in, at one point, and we were just, whatever, we got work to do. We can't be bothered with bomb threats.
Right, yeah.
That's gotta be the front office anyway, right?
Yeah.
You and your violent game will show you by bombing you, right? Like
It's a good thing there was no social media back then.
No.
Can you imagine that? Like just.
Oh my God.
Yeah. We would have been canceled so fast it wouldn't have been funny.
We're too old to be canceled now.
I know, right? I'm cancel proof at this point. I don't have.
Yeah, you're legends. They don't cancel legends anymore. You guys, you made it. You were like cancel. You're in trouble. Now they get a free pass forever. From that point on. Yeah.
I'm gonna. Someone keeps asking John if he's free to talk about what he's doing now. I'm gonna guess you're not free, but feel free to answer.
Yeah. No, I can't talk about anything.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
We're here to talk about Midway in the 90s.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
People try and sneak stuff in.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Just the sheer joy of pulling that spinal cord out, for the first time. I mean, that was just.
Yeah.
I don't.
We talk about it in here a little bit, but when I started at Midway, I remember being somewhat shocked that we could do this stuff. And who I was such a kid, but who egged me on was Eugene and Termel. They were like the devils on my shoulders, just poking, with Smash TV and then Total Carnage, was the follow-up, and then came Mortal Kombat. But that process was egged on all along the way by folks like Eugene and Mark, and Ed certainly was not shy about any of the stuff that we did. So I washed my hands. It's like I was just a dumb kid doing what these guys were telling me was okay to do.
For $19K a year, man.
Yeah, exactly right. Hey, I was just making $19K a year. What do I know?
I was just following orders.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole concept of I can't believe they did that. You guys were probably like, nobody's telling us not to do it, so let's do it. But out on the other side, like on the other side of the screen, if you will, there was that power of rumor and that power of something hidden and that power of something taboo was a really big motivator. People would talk about that all the time. I heard, like Jeff Gertzman says in the I heard you could rip a guy's spine out. No way. And hiding moves and hiding characters and just sort of the level of I can't believe that they're allowed to do this. I mean, you were allowed to do it because nobody told you not to do it. But that was a huge motivator in what became the mystique around those games, and Midway became known as not just a technical innovator, but also like they're willing to push any boundary. By the time we got to Rev X, I remember doing an FAQ, or I edited somebody else's FAQ, and we put it in a magazine. But I got a playthrough of the game, and I'm like, how am I going to get to do that? How am I going to think that that's how you unlock this band member? The specificity with which everything was hidden, and that sense of you got to see this for yourself. oh, I don't believe that rumor is true. Well, then you got to see it for yourself. That every one of those was another 50 cents. It was kind of brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like you said before, we didn't have any oversight at all. So we would always, we developed games the way we hung, like the way we had conversations. Like we hung out a lot with each other. So we would joke around and kind of one up each other's stories and say, oh, what if we did this? Oh, and then we did this on top of it or whatever. And then the same thing happened with our games. Like, well, what if we did this? Is that a line? And nobody here to say no. And what about this? Is this a line? Nobody's saying no. What about this? Is this a line? And we just kept on doing it until we were way past the line, maybe in some cases, but didn't realize it because nobody told us we couldn't do that.
Right. And I remember like it being where you would put something cool on your screen just so you could get everybody come in your office and go, check this out. And then if nobody reacted, you're like, okay, I got to do something to make them scream. Like, right? We were all trying to like we were just working for each other, basically. We're just come in my office and check this out. And we'd all sit and like, I remember when you guys were working on Mortal Kombat, it's like, we were in Ed's office constantly. Like you had to wait. You played Cyberball while you were waiting to play on Mortal Kombat. If you lost, you had to leave and you go play that.
Yeah.
And then, but it was always like Ed would call and go, okay, I got something to check out. Okay, we run down there. Or Mark would say, come in here. I want you to see this. And it would be like just blood everywhere. And it was, he was just we were just gauging shock value, right, to our own selves.
Yeah.
Which we became less anesthetized to it. Wait, no, we got to rip somebody's spine out. Okay, that'll get them after lunch for sure.
Did you ever get in trouble for an Easter egg you hid in the game? Asks Midway Forever.
Only Mark did. You know what? And I'm going to just go out on a limb here and say he deserves it because I played his game Beer Run when I was a kid, and it said that there were these artesians just ahead. I played that game for hours. And when I met Mark, I go, okay, where were the artesians? He goes, what? There were no artesians. And I'm like, seriously, dude? I spent like so many hours trying to find out.
He did that even before Smash TV.
Oh, yeah. Dude, Pleasure Dome was nothing compared to Tramel pulled off stuff in the Apple days that was like ridiculous.
That's great.
I know. So when he got the Pleasure Dome letters, I was like, you deserve it.
Yeah.
But it was funny. It was funny. It was a funny time.
I could be remembering wrong, but it's possible that the sort of sequel to Robotron, Total Carnage, Eugene, you might know the answer to this.
Yeah.
I think we were steered away from doing a direct sequel because of that controversy and the operators being pissed off about it. Am I remembering that right, or is that not how that went down?
Are you talking about the Pleasure Dome thing?
Yeah, right. I remember operators being pissed about it, and our sales guys, constantly harassing Mark about it.
But I think it was actually it really increased play on the game. I mean, that was the crazy thing about it, because nobody could figure out how to do it. But then people would lie. I guess it was like the Usenet or something.
Right.
And a number of people would lie and say they were in the Pleasure Domes. So it gave credence to like it was real, and it was just liars trying to get publicity, but I mean, people would play that game for, like the artesians. I mean, there was a lot of coin drop there. So I don't think any operators complained, but I think actually management was worried maybe they're going to get sued, by players, some kind of class action suit or something. So eventually, it was a couple of years before they figured out it was just bullshit. I mean, it's like
I think we actually added a Pleasure Dome at one point and had updated. Yeah, and I don't know that every location got them, but I believe
it was so bogus. It was so bogus. It's just like it's like this dream of the Pleasure Domes, everything, and then it was like a couple of pixelated girls, and some guy in a hot tub. I mean, it was just it never could be the dream. That's why the beauty was that you could never find it. It's like heaven.
Right.
You don't want to pixelize heaven. I mean, it's not going to be cool.
Yeah, we're on Rev X right now, so to go. And another reason why I really want to talk to Dan is just because he knows so much about music games also. But I didn't know that Aerosmith had done a different music game also beyond Rev X.
They had done a home PC game called Quest for Fame. You tracked it down, but it was you were supposed to be on stage with the band, and CD-ROM gave us the ability to do live action footage and stuff, and they just seemed very amenable to the ideas of video games. They seemed to get it. They were, they had come back at that point. They had done Permanent Vacation in 1986, and they had sort of gotten back to the top of the rock heap. And between them and their management, they were really open to a lot of ideas. They were not afraid of computers, whereas, a lot of sort of the old guard of rock were like, I don't get why computers matter to us. And they just didn't understand what video games were because it wasn't entertainment to them. But Aerosmith was way ahead of it. Were they easy to work with?
Oh, they were awesome. I mean, we had to do the horrible pitch, but we actually went to Boston and pitched their management. The band wasn't there in their little place, and they loved it. And they said that you got to play this on videotape for them. So we actually, that crazy videotape that Jack and I made we literally got off the airplane and came into Williams and shot that tape. And we go, there's no way they're going to do anything with us. Look at us on this tape.
A little trivia about that tape was that I don't think I had started. Maybe I was at Midway at the time, but Steve Barron had contacted me and said, "Hey, we need somebody to edit a tape for us." And I was like, "What? Okay." And I had access to an Amiga video toaster system at the.
Did you edit that tape?
So it was at the local college, and so we got the tape, and I'm on my toaster editing this thing, and you guys just shot literally one camera, setup, just you two talking, so I couldn't cut or anything. And I was like, this tape is horrible. What am I going to do with this?
It's horrible.
And so if I put in as many video toaster wipes as star wipes as possible and stuff.
The crazy thing is when they came, I had this we got them to agree to come, and I remember we were getting ready for them to show up, and we spent like a weekend just getting the studio ready, and we had this person come in that wanted us to put incense and put carpet down. It was crazy. It was bizarre. Yeah. And I remember going to bed at 3 a.m. when we were setting it up, and just closing my eyes going, what if these guys are complete a-holes and we just invited these guys into the studio and this is going to be horrible? And you know what? It was not like that. But I had this one moment where we just invited rock stars into our house. This could be terrible and go wrong in so many different ways. But Steven Tyler, when he came off the bus, he obviously studied the tape. He knew everything. He's like, "George, what's up?" And he gives me this big hug. And I'm like, he came here to work, man. And they all came to work, and they're very professional. And, I was going to say Joe Perry, actually, he sat behind me the whole time when we were working, asking me all these questions about the technology that we were using. And he wanted to know if he could get it on his Mac. He wanted to be able to digitize. He was really very interested in what we were doing. So I found that kind of cool, actually, because he just sat there and talked to me the whole time about, how we did everything, super interested, super smart.
Yeah. During that whole shoot, I actually had my own personal high-A camera. I was walking around with it. And so I got a lot of that footage of them just hanging out. And yeah, you were right. They were totally just hanging. They weren't I'm in the dressing room, call me when you're ready. They were wandering around and hanging out.
It was terrifying, though. From literally being the person that said, yeah, we want Aerosmith to come here. It was terrifying to have that. But everybody, I couldn't believe how everybody got. The cool thing was, if Aerosmith is coming to the building, you had no problem with getting people to work. I'll come in on Sunday.
And the place was the cleanest and most orderly it ever looked.
That's right. Yeah. It's funny because I remember when you guys were doing all that, and I remember thinking how embarrassing it is that these guys are going to come into this factory, into our shitty studio, and they're going to see how we work, because there was a rawness to the work that we did that was going to be exposed. We were going to be exposed.
And a smell.
Yeah. But no, it was great. Yeah, there was a lot of cleanup. And actually, I remember that back room. You guys did a great job making it look like a professional, hey, this is an actual studio where we shoot this stuff. And good job there. Because I think we benefited from that afterwards. All the work that was put into Aerosmith coming in, we benefited,
the creative media department at Midway was amazing. I mean, they helped set that up, but then they just documented everything. And
actually, they weren't creative media then. We hired them to come in and do that. So that's how they got intro to Midway, because Jim Green came in. We hired him as a crew to come in and do the documentary. So that's how he actually got his connection into Midway.
Because after that, everything got documented.
Everything needed a video, right? That's RevX's contribution to Midway, I guess. Everybody needed a video after that. Everybody needed a making of.
No, seriously. They were like Ken Fidesna, before he donated it to the Strong Museum, he had an entire wall of tapes that he recovered from Midway. Thank God, because who knows what would have happened to them. And like I said, like with the film, I was like super lucky that he gave me access to all that.
Well, there's one little known making of tape that even you don't know about, Josh, that John Vogel and I made when we made T2, and it's very funny. It's got some priceless footage in there.
Now are you telling me this?
I was going to say, now that the final cut is finally here, now I have one more videotape.
Yeah, you know the first rule. You don't give them all your secrets.
I got what I needed. I'm not gonna push it.
That's another Kickstarter, man.
5 years of this, man.
Like whoever said it, you got to do insert coin to continue, man. That's going to be the next one. I'm just trying to give you a little, I know this has been a long journey. I just want to give you a little energy to do it again.
Nice.
Because it is amazing. I mean, honestly, it's amazing what you put together. It's just so much fun.
This segment is the Mortal Kombat movie segment, and this was actually on the chopping block for a long time. It wasn't going to be in the original cut because the film actually ran smoother without it. But I knew that this was the only bit of what I would call fan service that I left in the film that didn't hurt the film, but didn't necessarily help it. But I knew fans would really get into it. And I got super lucky getting both Larry Kasanoff and Paul Anderson to sit down on it. And I got them pretty much back to back, one day after the other. But Paul Anderson was kind of like Ernest Cline. He's just like, yeah, I'll give you, a couple hours of time, just, come to my place in Beverly Hills and hang out. And all I wanted to do was see if I can bump into his wife. Just interview, but kind of hanging. I was trying to delay things beyond the shoot. Oh, I gotta check my camera. Just hoping I would run into her, and it never happened. But he was super cool, and he was at the time he was in pre-production on the Monster Hunter movie that just recently came out. But it was really neat to talk to him. And then Larry Kasanoff, he still has a production company out in Santa Monica, and so he's doing a lot of animations and ride videos now and everything. But he has the props from the Mortal Kombat movie right outside of his studio. And so I got to take pictures of it. He had Goro's head over there and stuff and all kinds of cool things hanging out. I was surprised, a lot of the props are just out in the back of the studio. I'm surprised, people haven't gone in and, stole them or something. But they're huge. They're giant sculptures.
I was just going to say direct correlation between the T2 game and what happened here is that, Larry was a producer on Terminator. On Terminator 2. And so Midway came into contact with him through, George and Jack's work on the team's work on the Terminator 2 game. And that's how, that kind of snowballed into his relationship with Midway and ultimately, his participation with Mortal Kombat. So it all kind of snowballed.
And it was super funny when you mentioned all the characters, right? One thing that we did when we went out for Terminator 2 is we went to Stan Winston's creature creation shop that he had. And I remember going and he had all the old stuff. And I just remember seeing Pumpkinhead. I was like, it's Pumpkinhead. He had his whole library of all the characters just lined up so you could see them all. It was incredible. Those guys that make those things are phenomenal.
Yeah.
John, in the chat, they keep asking about the hornbuckle rumors from Mortal Kombat 2. I don't even know what that is.
I'm not so sure either, but there was no hornbuckle character ever in the coin-op game, so I don't know where that came from. It's total BS. I think maybe it has something to do with one of the home iterations of the product, but certainly not the arcade game.
I think it has to do with the player that's on fire in the background of the pit stage.
Yeah.
Fans have called him Hornbuckle, and I think they've created sort of that's what this means, and this is who this is. It's basically, fan canon that has come around.
That's awesome. Then it's legit. Yeah. Then I guess it's legit. But it wasn't anything we did.
Whatever you believe about Hornbuckle, that's great. It's true.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Keep running.
MK12, man, get Hornbuckle in there, man.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah, they just created some DLC.
Actually, it does remind me because both with Dan and Chris with the video game journalism from the 90s. This is a question for like Tobias and Sal and George too. I guess is would you guys feed like misinformation or fake news to the publications?
Yeah, no comment.
Yeah, you know what? I'll admit to the one thing that we corrected it, but it was the images of the cheerleaders in NBA Jam, being in NBA Jam. Everybody was asking us if they were in there. I didn't say they were. I think Mark did, if I remember. But I created the images that reinforced that story from Mark. So yeah, we created fake images of them playing in the game, or at least I did. And then Mark's like, he sent that over. Was that to you, Dan? Who did he send that to?
No, that was to Video Games and Computer Entertainment, which was Andy Eddy's publication at the time. And that ran because that legitimized it. That was immediate. Well, there's a screenshot of Carrie Hoskins doing a flaming dunk in a cheerleader off, so it must be true. Yeah. And I, at the time, I was a fan, and on the side of doing work, I was also maintaining an FAQ about what was true and what was not true, and just the ridiculous amounts of rumors that came through. It was hard to keep up with everything. But that screen. Then people took pictures of that and they would scan it in and they would got handed around in the early days of BBS's online, and that was God's proof. No, who would fake a screenshot? Sal would.
Apparently Sal.
But on that note, and this is one of the real exciting things about Chris, contacting me from Film Threat. First, I was a big Film Threat fan when I was in film school, but then working at Midway, I remember Chris was the editor of Tips and Tricks magazine, and I remember. Well, here's the mugshot of Carrie Hoskins and such. But I remember when this issue came out with everybody's secret heads from the company, that just blew my mind. That was like the first time I had ever seen myself in a magazine, in a mainstream magazine, and that's when I realized, like, man, this video game, this company is like doing some crazy ass things. But
you got to credit Chris Bienik for that. He was really. I remember that guy. I came on after Andy Eddy, and we split Video Games and Computer Entertainment into two magazines.
Yeah.
Video Games, a Computer Player, and Mike Davila was there, and we talked video game rumors. That was the talk all day. Was like, did you hear this? So we would be susceptible to anything you'd probably send us. Just to have the news, right? Like, Dan, you remember that era it was really fun too.
It was. All those rumors were currency for the readers, but they were also currency. That's what made you cool at school. Oh, did you hear about this thing? But also the editors at all the different publications, there was friendly rivalries, but we all went to the same preview events and stuff, and we're all like, can you give us some codes that none of the other magazines have? We know you've buried some stuff in there. What can you tell us? So yeah, it was a lot of fun to go chasing down all those rabbit holes where there were a lot of times just no rabbits, Sal.
One time for me anyway.
I just remembered on my bookshelf I had been saving this for Sal. It's a video games. You could see Sal is getting dunked on by Sir Charles.
Getting posterized. Yeah.
I have that issue. I edited that issue. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's right. It's funny because I can read you wrote an editorial about video game violence.
Yeah, that got me in trouble with the Attorney General of the state of California.
Were you for it?
Yeah, for it.
Well, I tried to. This is weird. I tried to explain because Dan Lundgren, I don't know if you remember, he put out this big press release saying if the video game industry doesn't curb the violence, we're going to introduce legislation to do it for you, right? Mm-hmm. This is before ratings, and I tried to explain that video games are more of if you're just a button mashing, you're not going to win. It's more of a form of high-speed chess, that there's a thought process to it. And it's not, it's not just about button mashing, but then it blew up in the national media. I was a national media story for like 2 days because it was this big battle over video game violence influences people to be violent. Well, I think more mental illness and some anything will push someone mentally ill into that. So I don't believe it's video games or movies or any of that stuff. But yeah, that was crazy at the time. I'm sure if this was the time of the internet, there would be a lot more, criticism and canceling and all that. Thank God this was where people had to, read about video game news, in magazines, which for those of you that don't know, magazines are like the internet, but on really thin slices of wood. used to handcraft them in the 80s and 90s, and that's how people learned about video games. Okay, that's enough of my rant. Sorry.
So let's see, we're on War Gods now, and that this is just from my point of view. It was there were a lot of new people had come on War Gods. It's like George was heading up that project, but I'm trying to remember who were the new people that came on for that.
Oh, on the War Gods project, Joe Linhoff was on it, and there were guys that were also, veteran guys, but Joe Linhoff came on as programmer, and this guy named Dave Simon was doing some of the artwork stuff, and who else? Well, Jim Gentile was on it, so he was on that. And then a guy named Jim Rohn. I don't know if you remember Jim Rohn. And
right.
Tom Brierton was another artist. Yeah, definitely some new guys, but most importantly, we brought Matt Booty over from the Sound Group, and his first video game project was
that his first? I didn't know that.
Yeah, we brought him over. He wanted to get into video games really bad, so that's when he left the audio department, heading the audio department, and came over.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was definitely the teams were expanding though. Then there were a lot of new people. Yeah. I think at that particular time at Midway, it started getting to me as I don't even know who you are. You know what I mean? I'd walk down the hall, literally, I would not know, which is really weird because, we were such a tight knit group. I did not know who everybody was all the time in the video department. And it was in a different building then. So everything was kind of different at that point.
Yeah, you guys moved across the street at some point because I had left to go to California and I came back to visit, and you guys were all across the street in a completely new building. I was like, what happened?
Well, gambling happened. They kicked us out. Remember when those slot machines showed up outside our offices? What that happened overnight or something, right? I remember coming into work one day and all of a sudden there's all these slot machines out in the pit, and I'm like,
so. Is that why we moved? I thought we moved because they were rewarding us with fancy new offices for all of our successes. I didn't know they were kicking us out to make room for that.
I don't know if you knew that. Yeah, we were getting kicked out because gambling was the new money. we were the old money. Okay, I think they measured the pot of gold they could get with what we were doing, and then they said, this is not enough gold. we need more gold, right? So
makes sense.
I think, they were placating us by saying that, but it was really for gambling because obviously, look what happened. They took over the whole building, right?
Mm-hmm. So block. Yeah. So right now we're on Cruisin', and I just want to make sure we give proper props to Mark Lafredo, who just did incredible hardware for the games and basically created an entire 3D system, practically by himself with Eugene for Cruisin'.
Well, he did that for our other games too. Yeah. He did all of our games.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I mean, I had sat and talked to Mark for a long time. I didn't know his background and how deep it went, in terms of just designing all those boards for games across, multiple decades.
Yeah, he used to design supercomputers for a company called Amdahl, which back in the 80s, and I mean, it was incredible. The 3D system for Cruisin' was more powerful than a Sony PlayStation, maybe twice as powerful. And I mean, it was designed by two hardware guys. I mean, it was it wasn't like a team of thousands or hundreds or tens. It was two guys did a complete 3D hardware system from scratch. And it was unbelievable.
Yeah. I talked about it way back as well. When, even on the 2D hardware systems, just the amount of colors that we could put on the screen was a big deal. When you compared it to other games of the same era, the 16 colors, 256 colors for the whole screen, flat bland looking colors because they could only use so many. And we could do 256 palettes of 256 colors. And we were creative enough because of the tools that we had, thanks to Warren and Sean and everybody that was there, that we could isolate colors properly, where we could color reduce things to look better than we could have by hand through algorithms that you guys wrote up. And basically the whole process gave us these super rich, beautiful, seemingly limitless colors on screen at a time when everybody else was bound to those 256 colors on their monitors.
Warren
his hardware. Oh, I'm sorry, George, but Lafredo's hardware, at one point he added scaling. Because if we wanted things to grow or shrink, we had to store multiple copies. Then he added scaling, and wow, that I remember that made like Revolution X's display system possible.
Yeah, we used to, that was called DMA2, and Mark was actually not working. I don't think he was working at Midway then. And I remember going to his apartment. You have to like eat Chinese food and talk to Mark about what the hardware was going to be. And like he had like everything up on his wall and like, just like, okay, this is what we're going to do. And then somehow he would create these chips that like, I want to do it this way. And he'd go, okay, I can figure it out. And he just had this mad ability to create these very, very complex pieces of hardware.
Yeah. That was pretty much single-handedly, he was, an outside consultant. I worked with him a little bit, and but I mean, I don't know. He was getting like maybe 20 or 30 grand to do that shit. I mean,
yeah.
It was ridiculous. And he got no respect from management at all.
No.
I mean, they had no idea what he was doing for the company. I mean, it was.
Well, one thing is on the tail end of the cruising segment, and Eugene, you brought this up, and Carly, you had brought this up in your interview, and others brought up is that how much women like driving games. Carly, can you expand on that? Because I remember you mentioning that.
Yeah, like, I mean, that was just one of the things that showed up even early. Like, when you even look at arcade games from the 70s and 80s, they'll show, like, oh, we tried this game, and, like, we found women played it more. And, I mean, who knows why, right? Like, I think sometimes there's not, like, a super deep reason, but it's probably, like, also you're in the arcade, and there's, like, 30 shooting games and one driving game, and you're like, well, I don't like shooting, so I guess I'll go driving.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing, and it was like junior high girls.
Yeah.
Actually, we had this promotion. There was this big radio station in the day. It's called B96, and what it was. What were the two guys?
Eddie and Jobo.
Eddie and Jobo, right? So Eddie and Jobo were having this huge promotion at I don't know, some arcade out in Lombard or something, and so we went out there, and it was like 100 junior high girls, and we're just like, oh my god, we're going to jail today, like we gotta watch ourselves, this is but they were just like totally into the cruising games, and it was really cool. I mean, amazing players too.
So someone has a very complex question for Warren Davis. Can you go back and locate the exact journal article that detailed the compression algorithm that made the high-res Oro splash screen in Mortal Kombat 1 possible?
I can answer this. No.
Okay.
No, I cannot. But I can tell you that it was, I believe it was like a similar algorithm to what is now currently called zip. Everybody uses zip files, and it was some form of an LZW compression algorithm, which was at that time, on the new side. But that was basically it.
And I remember, Warren, you getting really excited about that. Like, I remember you just going, this is so cool. Like, and honestly, the reason I bring it up is because that is what drove everybody. And I remember Warren going all the way back. Sal, you made me think of it. Thinking of taking all those colors and turning them into a palette. That didn't just happen. Like, Warren figured that crap out before anybody had to figure that out, right? Nobody dealt with 32,000 colors down to 256 or whatever. And Warren would go, this is so cool. And I'm like, how do you even think of that stuff? You know, he would just work his brain through it all. It was amazing. You were amazing how you process through that stuff, because we were doing things that people weren't doing yet in the mainstream, right?
Yeah, but I was finding these algorithms in technical journals. I would literally go to libraries and scour through all the computer graphics technical journals to try to find these algorithms. And then I'd find these things, like I knew what I needed, and then I'd find these articles that had these very complex names about color quantization and all that stuff. And then I had to figure out, color quantization, that's their name for what I want. I didn't know it had a name, you know. So,
I'm going to call it WIMP.
Exactly. WIMP and WTARG. Yeah.
And Blimp.
And Blimp.
And Blimp.
So the other one of the things that was interesting was trying to, like, you know, everyone always asks, like, what was the downfall of arcades, you know, and there were so many different theories going around that I wasn't about to, like, come to one conclusion, say this is the reason. So I threw out like a spaghetti at the wall. Here are some of the many reasons, you know, internet, you know, arcade operators wanting too much money, and all these, the rise of CD-ROMs and such, and just all contributed. But I don't think there was ever, unless you guys disagree, I don't think there was ever like one thing that made arcades disappear. You know,
they COVID, I guess, made them disappear. But I don't think they ever really did. I think Midway disappeared, but the arcades did not. It was more, I think, Midway's exit, right? I don't know. Midway's exit from the arcades did not. It didn't really spell the demise of arcades.
Yeah, I mean, but it was a very tough time at that era in the arcade business, and it also could have corresponded to the introduction of I think it was PS2 or PS3, and also Xbox at the time. And I remember certainly for like the fighting games, which were, you know, a huge piece of the arcade. You know, the fighting players just moved online, and you know, they said, you know, I'm not going to spend $100 a night to play fucking Mortal Kombat. You know, it's like, and so that we lost a lot of the hardcore players. Of course, you know, this was first-person shooters were coming out. You know, Quake and Doom games, and you know, it was just a huge amount of stuff was happening on PCs and console, and we lost a lot of players. And so it became more of a casual market.
The interesting thing, though, is that, you know, before we started on NARC, arcades were dead then, right? Arcades died,
right?
And then all of a sudden, you know, then Street Fighter shows up. You know, Double Dragon comes, NARC comes, Street Fighter shows up, and all, you know, Street Fighter sold more than everything that we'd ever seen before. So it all, I mean. And then pinball was dead, right? I remember in the early 80s,
oh my God,
you couldn't make money on a pinball machine no matter how you tried. And then in that 90s period, pinball, while we were doing all these video games, they were making 300 pinball machines a day in that factory. Like literally, if a truck didn't pull up on a given day, you couldn't leave the factory because the boxes were stacked up in front of the doors. It was, I mean, it's like a cyclical thing. It's just like Eugene said, you know, yeah, these systems come out, people move this way, but then you have to think of how are you going to bring them back into the public space. It becomes a problem to solve, which I think with, you know, we've done that so many times. It's, you know, we didn't think when we started video back at Midway, we really had that much chance of success, right, Eugene? I mean, it was like, we think there's something here, but there wasn't at the time.
Yeah, I mean, but it's novelty. You have to, you know, it's really game concepts. It's you know, you've got to have something new that blows people's minds, you know, and that's, I mean, that was the whole one-upmanship that between the teams, you know, like, well, check this out, you know, like I'm pulling the spinal cord. Check this out, man. I'm decapitating 5 people at once. You know, it was, you know, just one-upsmanship, but that's how you get people's attention in the arcade. You have to have something new and cool.
Yeah.
And so
I remember back in the late 90s or mid to late 90s when Dance Dance Revolution came out, because that thing for me, I mean, that's the first time in years that I had seen crowds in the arcades. And I thought, oh, somebody did it. Somebody figured out a way to get people back in the arcades because of that huge, massive platform. You you couldn't at the time have that at home.
Right.
They gave you an experience you couldn't have at home.
When I lived in Austin, I volunteered at a youth center, and there was like a kid in Austin named Kevin. I remember this. And all the teenagers knew who he was because he was so good at Dance Dance Revolution. Like every teenager in the city knew about Kevin. Nobody knew his last name. And then, I was at Dave & Buster's one time, and I like suddenly like no one's around, and I'm like, that's kind of creepy. And it's because Kevin had showed up and the entire place was watching him play. And, even now if you go to like Round One or Dave & Buster's, it's all the rhythm games and stuff from Japan are doing really well because you can't do that stuff at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you just have that audience factor, that's insane. But I remember, guys would play DDR, and they'd actually hold themselves up by their hands so they didn't have any weight on their feet, so they could go faster, on the boxes, just like how do they do that?
I like when they flip. That's always really impressive.
Yeah.
So
that was a whole new thing.
Was asking, how many guests physically own consoles? I assume not game consoles, but like stand-up video game arcade machines. I do not. Does anyone here own? Pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
I have an NBA Jam with the 1.0 chipsets with the Mortal Kombat characters in it that are never supposed to be seen again. Very proud.
I was just going to add one thing real quick. Just talking about arcades, especially today, I think that the magic that still exists is the peripherals. It's there's things you can do in the arcade that you just don't get in the home. A couple of years ago, I got to visit. Eugene gave me a tour of their place, and we went around to a couple of arcades, and I didn't know the breadth of the stuff that Eugene was doing, and I saw all the different peripherals, like how different each game was, and that's magic that you don't get on home with a little controller. That's the downside of the home consoles and home play is everyone's playing on the same peripheral, and the magic of the arcade to me nowadays is the fact that each one of these games is a different beast, and I think that still is that was probably the magic back then that we got away from with the Mortal Kombats and the NBA Jams. That I think, Eugene and George, you guys kind of circled back to is that's the magic of what you guys do is the physical peripherals that, that the arcade machines are outfitted with that make them different.
Right. Yeah. I think that it's interesting, John, because, when we were making the games at Midway, I remember thinking these cabinets are so huge because they were so much bigger than the old video game cabinets, like 4-player NBA Jam, all the cabinets were so big. And now I look at the Midway cabinets and I see the stuff we build now, and I'm like, wow, these Midway cabinets are so old and boring.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, if you look at the 4-player Halo we did, that thing's it's like a small building, That,
yeah, right. No, but it's
crazy.
But it's a legitimate work of art. Like Eugene, you showed that to me, and I was just stunned. I was stunned at what I saw.
Yeah, it's like a spaceship landed in the arcade. I mean, it's
exactly right.
11 feet by 11 feet by 11 feet high, just
right.
It's I remember we made that and we just go, you know what, we'll never do this again. This is
when we were watching, we watched like 8 people trying to push it into place, and we're like, yeah, this is ridiculous.
But I was going to say, it almost made me embarrassed to work on a button joystick game. It's like, it's just a button and a joystick. Who cares?
Well, the funny thing is, John, is I think you put it perfectly. Like you said, Eugene and Mark were influencing you, right?
Uh-huh.
I still work for Eugene. It's like he's the guy that influenced all of us and still pushes us. Like even today, like he'll look at something and go, yeah, you could do better than that. That's just not big enough. That's not bright enough. That's not, it's not going to do it. And if you walk into a Main Event or Dave & Buster's, our games have to fit in that environment now. And it's like walking into Times Square, right? And you have to like, not the Times Square where Mortal Kombat tested, but like
sure, of course,
the real Times Square, right? It's like, and so, yeah, it's just bigger, brighter, better. It's always been, that's what drove us at Midway and still drives us today.
Yeah. We had a comment from Michael Lynn, one of our coworkers, and about the cruising car. And we had during the Cruising USA game, we had this limited edition full motion car on like hydraulic. It wasn't hydraulics, but it was like huge actuators, and we were so afraid people were going to get killed with this thing. And I guess finally, I think they all finally broke in the field. So we were like, oh my God, thank goodness. And but I ended up, when they closed on Midway, they had one of these things left, frozen in like this position. and they Ken Podesta called up and says, "Hey, do you want this thing? We're cleaning out.
It's going in the river. It's going in the river."
Yeah, and we actually we still have it in the shop. It's like frozen, like
at a time.
Huge.
It's an amber.
Yeah, and but it was a really cool motion. We did this crazy motion version of Cruising USA that, again, kind of like the Halo game, will probably never be duplicated again. But that's the arcade. You know, we can have that physical spectacle, that the power of big, the power of crazy controllers, and so that's one of our reasons we're still around.
Someone asked about Hydro Thunder. Said it's one of the greatest racing games of all time. Where that came from, Hydro Thunder.
That was a team out from Midway West down in San Diego, and Steve Rank was kind of the leader of that project and the concept guy and head coder and, you know, all around dictator. And I think we also buddy Mike Detmar down there was on the project, and you know, a number of other guys, and it was so unique for its era because they really got the feeling of water and motion, and, you know, the graphics were so far ahead of the time, and even today look great. And just the way they had the waves going and those cool, you know, offshore power boats, and just incredible. Like, they had tidal waves, and, you know, great scenery. You know, you're going through Hong Kong or something, and you're, you know, in mountain streams and tropical. You're in the tropics, and it was still today an amazing game. And you know, it was a small team of 5 or 6 people in San Diego. Amazing game.
Someone also is asking, what's everyone's favorite non-Midway game, and not a Midway, like, or game from another company and one you didn't work on. Non-Midway game.
Marble Madness. I like Marble Madness. It's like one of my favorite games.
That's a good question.
Oh, tough question now.
William Geek. Yeah, I can't.
You know what's interesting about that question is you know, obviously one of our biggest competitors was Atari at the time, and I remember when we were working on NARC, we have this internal, or this industry magazine called Replay that has this chart that comes out every month and ranks all the top games. It's kind of like the Billboard ranking of arcade video games. And Atari used to have just all the top slots, like Gauntlet, you know, Paperboy. And I just remember going, man, if we could just break in, you know, and if we could do one game like Atari does it, that would be amazing. It just, you know, they were so prolific at that one period of just making great technology and great games. I wanted us to be them. We ended up buying them, so I guess we won at the end. But.
Yeah, certainly Hard Driving, which was the first 3D simulator.
Well, like Rush 2049 was awesome.
Yeah, Rush 2049. That was after we bought them. Yeah. So we'll take.
No, that. Well, I guess Rush.
Yeah, the first Rush.
The original Rush was not.
We released it. They had the beginnings of it, but that was a Midway game.
The first Rush.
Like Virtual Racing and Virtual Fighter from Sega. Those are all like really well.
Sega had great games too.
Yeah.
Obviously Daytona is like, you know, still.
Yeah, I thought Outrun was so brilliant. You know, you know, you always like, why the fuck didn't I think of that? You know, it's like there's always like these great games, and you know, you're just like, you know, you're like, oh man, I just spent 5 years doing stuff, and, you know, this would have been much cooler. It's like Street Fighter, of course. You know, great. I mean, there was just so many awesome games.
Yeah, you know, it's funny for me, just in terms of arcade games, the ones that I experienced when I was younger, before I started working on games, tend to be the ones that I remember most fondly. Because for some reason, I think once I started working on them, I I experienced them differently. It's like it's like I would look at the games and I couldn't enjoy them the way that I used to when I was, a naive kid. It's like now you start to deconstruct them, like how are they doing this, how are they doing that, or why are they doing these things? Yeah. Whereas when I was younger, there was the innocence of just playing games for the sake of playing them, and I think I missed that part of being able to enjoy games. That even to this day, I don't experience games quite the way I think I did when I was a kid. So my best memories are actually Eugene. Robotron was huge. Defender, I remember. Yeah. My hands weren't big enough to get to the buttons. I was so young when I played that game. That was like the game for the bigger kids. But like Zookeeper was a great favorite of mine. All these weird Bagman. I played this game called Bagman in the arcade. Yeah. But games like that, I just remember I have super fond memories of, and just being an arcade rat and hanging around. And you would always gravitate towards the ones that you could play the longest because I didn't have a whole lot of money. And so you'd play the ones that would last the longest before you had to run out and help someone carry their groceries to the car to get another couple quarters to run back in, play a few more games. So I
used to check all the coin slots, like the
yeah, exactly right. Hang around, but yeah,
that was kind of the end of the night where it's like, okay, time to scrounge, and people would just drop money around. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Arcades were kind of dark, and. Mm-hmm. You'd find quarters in strange places.
Payphones were good for that. Payphones were good. You put your finger on the coin return for a payphone. You find a quarter every now and then.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And run straight to the arcade with it.
Yeah.
Well, the movie's ended. I want to thank Josh and everybody here. Congratulations to everyone. Josh, great job.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Fantastic.
Thanks. It's been a joy hanging out with everybody again. Upon the release of the film.
Same here.
Yeah, good seeing everybody.
And the DVD is coming out, right?
Yes.
It's going to be. He's going to have extras on it.
Yeah. So right now the film is out on Amazon and virtual cinemas on the 11th, or maybe it's the 12th now, but on the 11th or 12th, it'll be on all the platforms. So iTunes, Vudu, Google Play, everything out there. And then the Blu-ray will be start shipping at the end of the month. And so the Blu-ray actually has a ton of other materials that didn't make it into the film. And wow. Yeah, so I think people get really excited by a lot of stuff that people have never seen before. My beloved WrestleMania segment will finally see and but yeah, so I'm super excited, and again, thanks to everybody for the first initial release of the film being so just being wildly successful. So I'm really grateful for that.
And when is the Blu-ray out?
So right now it's literally being pressed right now. So it should be ready to ship around like at the end of January, but I'm setting up pre-orders for it early next week. So it should be around the 12th. The pre-orders will get started, and it'll be on the insertcoindoc.com. We'll have the link for it, and then we're getting it also set up with Amazon and other services.
Cool. Any final words before we sign off here? We're getting a lot of great comments. People are really appreciative, so that's awesome.
I have a question for Josh.
Yep. Oh no.
Knowing what you know now, like, if you could rewind the clock, would you have done that Kickstarter, or would you do that Kickstarter again?
I think so. The thing is that the Kickstarter, I mean, the Kickstarter did really well, and I'm super grateful for it. In many ways, that Kickstarter was almost more to see if there was an audience for it in the first place. Right. So if my mantra was always, if this thing doesn't get funded, then it's not worth making it. Like that means nobody cares, and so I wasn't going to waste my time on it. And so when it did get funded, I kind of had a joyful moment, but also a holy shit moment. Now I got to do this thing.
And what would your funding level be if you did the Kickstarter again?
In all honesty, I don't think I would do. for whatever I do next, I don't think I would do a Kickstarter. If I do, I would do it differently. I mean, you just learn these things but this is the Wild West days of Kickstarter. So people.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah. So now looking back on it, it's just like, oh, that's, maybe I shouldn't have done this or that. But yeah, the one thing that I didn't, that I underestimated was how long it was going to take. And partly it was my fault because the more I worked on it, the more I realized I didn't want anyone else to work on it. so I got really greedy about it in terms of like, I'm just going to stick with it. Because I wasn't going to edit myself, and I ended up editing myself and all these other things. So yeah, I probably would be a little bit smarter with the way I scheduled things.
Well, Josh, was your hourly compensation greater than John Tobias's?
Do the math.
A year.
Well, I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
I said, was your hourly compensation greater than what John Tobias talked about?
If I were, I'm afraid of seeing how many hours I worked on the film compared to how much money was spent. I think it was like it's sub minimum wage.
Well, I wish you all the greatest success with it, Josh. You've done a great job, and I know, like just trying to get it to South by Southwest was such a disappointment, and but what's going on now, it seems like it's going really great, and I hope it does really well for you.
Thanks. The people who have seen the audience reception has been great, and I just want to make sure that the core audience was happy with it, and obviously you all who are involved with it, something to be proud to be a part of. So that's my biggest satisfaction.
And Josh, more just in your defense, I've contributed to a lot of Kickstarters, especially for indie films. They always take more than twice as long as you estimate. That's just the nature of it. I have no expectation. Hey, get me the movie when it's done. So they should be really happy that they got to be a part of it and be along for the ride. Someone asked a final question that I think is a really good one. We should just go around real quick. What's everyone doing now? What is everyone's current projects that you're all working on? Ones you can talk about, John Tobias, because I know you can't. Your lips are sealed on what you're working on. But going around, maybe starting with Eugene, and we'll just hit everybody.
I'm working at Raw Thrills, and we're doing arcade games. And our latest project, which we're just testing, is a VR game called King Kong of Skull Island VR. And it's incredible VR game, and you actually use your hands and your body to interact with the VR. So we're really excited about it. I think it's testing in an arcade down in Indiana. I think it's called Up Your Alley. I'm not kidding. I mean,
no joke. Be taken so many ways.
Dan, what about yourself?
I have written a book about my time being a game reviewer. It's called Critical Path. You can get that on Amazon. But I think the thing that might be at least vaguely amusing to the people watching is that my friend Jude Kelly and I formed a band, and we were both video game nerds, specifically arcade nerds, and we did a whole bunch of parody songs about video games, and we decided we needed a name that would make it like only a joke that really deep arcade nerds would get. So we're called Palette Swap Ninja, and you can get all of our stuff for free at paletteswapninja.com.
Oh my God.
So have fun with that.
Cool. Hey, George, what about yourself?
Well, I'm Eugene's partner in Raw Thrills. We work together to this day, and we're just, like Eugene said, we're about to release this VR Kong, and we're excited about that. But we've got a lot of cool projects in the works. I'm not going to say that COVID didn't slow us down a little bit, but we're looking forward to 2021 releasing some pretty cool titles. So still doing the arcade thing.
Is that one of those VR games where you go and you pay like $30 and you go in like a space and walk around? Because I've done that before. It's incredible. I've done the Star Wars game, and there's a bunch of others. They're amazing.
Yeah, actually, just a little bit different. It's an arcade motion simulator. So you're on a motion platform, and interacting with you got your VR headset on, but you're on a motion platform. So wow. It's a little different. But,
Attendantless is called. So because those big installations, I agree, are super cool. but they require a staff to run them. We're creating something that's attendant-less, so it can go a lot more places.
Oh, wow, cool. Carly, what about yourself? Your book?
Yeah, so Coin Operated Americans has been out for a few years. You can get it. I also have a book about Brenda Laurel because I founded and edit a series about influential game designers because we realized we can talk about film directors and not game designers. And we're like, well, that's kind of dumb. So actually the newest book that just came out in that series is on Todd Howard. It's by Wendy Sierra.
Awesome. Sal, what about yourself?
As we know, Amazon is taking over the world and they're making video games as well. I'm working on a project for them on an unannounced project, unannounced genre. Can't talk about it yet, but I'm doing the things that I feel that I'm best suited to do. So I'm excited to be able to work on this project and hope that all the details can be released soon.
Awesome.
Hey, Sal, can you call Jeff Bezos and ask him to put Insert Coin higher up on Amazon Prime?
Yo, Jeff.
And John, we know that you're keeping everything on the down low, so unless you can.
Well, the only thing I can't say is that so I'm in San Diego. We're starting up a studio for Warner Brothers Games down here, and we're a small studio right now, but we're growing. And as George had mentioned, I think COVID maybe slowed us down a little bit, but we're moving forward. We've got a great facility that we're putting together in Carlsbad, up north of San Diego. So super excited about that.
It's a beautiful area. And Warren Gates.
I've always got a bunch of irons in the fire. I've been doing some consulting work in the games area for Sony for the last few years. I'd really love to be able to plug my book. I after a few years of going to retro gaming shows and telling stories, I decided to put all these stories together in a book, which I started to self-publish about a year ago. But the wrinkle is that a publisher actually is interested in publishing it, and I just sold the rights to the publisher, so I cannot plug a book until it comes out later this year. So I guess you'll be hearing about it when it gets re-released in the fall.
Congrats, that's awesome.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
And Josh, of course, your film is out. Are you working on the sequel?
Not working on a sequel. And, I'm just getting the Blu-ray ready. But yeah, it's all about the release of the film. So again, go to insertcoindoc.com, and there's a screenings page that has all the links to it. Everywhere you can get the film. And there's a YouTube channel for Insert Coin. I think it's called Insert Coin Documentary. And so I've been releasing outtakes on there that aren't even on the Blu-ray. I'm just putting that out there for fans to take a look at, and it covers everything from NBA Jam to WrestleMania to Mortal Kombat, and there's a lot of random stuff of us just eating lunch. I put one up recently of us having lunch at an Italian restaurant on Western Avenue. I think it was Ed Boon's birthday. We're just hanging out. For some reason, people were really interested in that. So making use of all the extra footage.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank everybody on the panel here. This was amazing. Make sure to check out Insert Coin. I'm Chris Gore. I'm Film Threat on everything. Check out what we're doing. Watch parties every week here on YouTube, Twitch, and Facebook. Next week, our watch party is going to be for a movie called The Dark Divide, starring David Cross, the comedian David Cross, Deborah Messing. Both of them will be here for that watch party. So check it out. We do watch parties every Fridays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you, everybody. And I don't know, maybe we should just do a big Love Boat kiss. I don't know. we don't really have an official how we end this thing. So that's what I'm going to do. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for joining the watch party.
Bye.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.